everybody. We're actually together today in person.
We are. Hello.
This is what it looks like to roll the punches, to learn as you go,
We're doing it.
and to have a great time doing it.
So.
Ain't no shame.
I know.
Today we are going to talk about the female cycle and the moon, which I'm really excited about because, first of all, it's my jam. Second of all, I think it's very important for women to be better acquainted with their cycle because it does affect us so much. But we just treat it like it's a once a week, like 1 week out of the month a lot of the time, but it's actually always present. And just to introduce why it's relative to the moon, I think the moon is a fantastic example, direct example of something that shows up every single day but is never quite the same as it was the day before.
I agree. Yep.
And it, oddly enough, maybe it's not odd at all because everything's connected. The moon is on a 28 to 29 day cycle.
Hey.
Females are as well.
Yes.
So it reflects directly the feminine cycle, and we're going to dig into that a little bit more, and we're going to give you some specifics about what we're going to give you some specifics about the female cycle, what's going on during what phases, what to expect, and so that you can learn how to work with your cycle instead of against it. That's the overarching goal here.
Exactly. And even if maybe you're not very in tune with your body, and so this is maybe will be very new to you and something to learn about, because a lot of clients even just coaching is like, what are your cycles like? They're like, I don't know, it happens once a month. So it's like being just so it's learning to be in tune with your body, understanding what's going on, and we're going to explain a little bit that to you guys as well. So it's going to be a lot of information, but good information, because as a female, knowing your cycle is probably the most empowering thing. And knowing your body and what it's doing and how it's feeling and why you feel the way you do and why do you have a zit and why you got all that stuff? What's happening? Why do I feel great? Why do I not? And so this is going to be a very empowering episode that's going to teach you a lot about your body and how to understand just you.
And truthfully, one of the most important parts of being in tune with your cycle, in my opinion, is honoring your femininity.
Yeah.
The power of being a female, a woman, because we literally harness some pretty amazing power to be able to like grow and feed and like nurture a human with our physical bodies is a miracle. But we treat our cycle almost like a nuisance.
Yes. Where
we need to be celebrating it, really, or looking at it as more as the sacred, with the sacred energy and the sacred kind of.
I agree. No, I get what you're saying. It's like it's more than just a period. It's more than just being grumpy or this or that. It's a part of the women's. I'm gonna say, it's women's body, women's reproductive system, what she can do, how she feels, why she is the way she is, and if you think about it. Women go through like 3 phases of life versus men go through like 2. You have puberty, you have your period, and you have menopause. And
that's
I know, and so I think we're wiser. So, but
let's go with that.
We'll go with it.
We're wiser, and this is why.
But
so,
it's
Lauren,
very good. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, Lauren, tell us about the phases of the cycle and what happens. Give us just like a little hormones and your period 101.
Here we go. So. How I'm going to talk about them, though, is we're going to say that no one is on birth control of some sort, because being on birth control can definitely skew.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe how you're feeling, what your hormones are doing or not even doing. Or you could feel a certain way all the time and not feel the fluctuation. So keep that in mind. I'm talking from a standpoint of somebody not being on any type of birth control or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like even when we've had clients who have wanted us to read their blood panels, we're like, don't even bother getting them drawn if you're on birth control, because it's essentially tricking your body into thinking that you have certain hormones that you don't, and so it throws the whole thing off and you will not get an accurate read. So
yeah.
Birth control aside, if you are in naturally no birth control going on in your body,
this will make sense.
This is what a healthy cycle could and honestly should look like.
We are going to start with your period, okay? Your period, day 1 of your period is day 1 of your cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And most will get that confused and think like the last day of your period is day 1 of your cycle because you ended something. But really your period is day 1 of a cycle.
Yep.
Okay? So during your period, obviously you're gonna have the cramps, you're gonna have the bloating, the water retention, you're having the pain of some sort. If you get low back pain, I get pain down my legs.
Yeah.
That's weird. Yeah, all the things. You may feel a little more fatigued, not very energetic, when really it's like it would make sense because your body is losing a lot of blood. So you're not going to feel as energetic. You're losing a lot of minerals and things along those lines. So after your period ends, we are going to dive into the follicular phase. I always say this one funny.
Follicular.
I
always think whenever I hear follicular, I think of like follicle. And so that makes sense to me because it's like, you're getting ready to, the follicular phase, correct me if I'm wrong, is the phase where your body is basically preparing to possibly have its egg fertilized. Have an egg fertilized.
An egg was dropped for your period to happen, and it obviously didn't get fertilized, so you're shedding, okay? So we're starting over. So we go with the follicular.
Follicular.
phase. What's happening is your estrogen is now rising, okay? You're going to have slight weight gain, they say. When I say weight gain, guys, I'm not saying like you're going to gain 10 pounds overnight. No. Like, it could be some water. It could just be, honestly, it's probably water. Let's be real. Calmer mood, increased motivation, more energy, possible restlessness, though, because as your estrogen is rising, your progesterone doesn't mean it's always rising either. Your progesterone is something that can help keep you a little bit calmer. And your estrogen right now is like the main person. And she's just like,
she's the star of the show.
She's like, how are we doing? So, it's true. Also at this point, as your estrogen is rising, also our testosterone is rising too. So this when you're gonna just feel really good. You're like, what's happening? I'm doing it. We all have that feeling of my period is over. I can enjoy life. Here we go, right?
It's the steady climb. The steady climb begins.
We're
good. Yeah.
After that happens, what's gonna happen is you're actually gonna have ovulation. And this is where, in your follicular phase, also...
Follicular.
How many times am I going to say that tonight?
I don't know. We'll get it.
I know, right? What's happening as well is like all the eggs are getting ready to essentially be dropped to be fertilized. So they're all gathering. I always picture it of like all of them are just gathering at the top of like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm going to drop. We're going to get fertilized. We're going to ovulate. It'll be me. What's happening? Things like that. Okay. So then you're going to ovulate. This is where your sex drive's probably going to be the highest. Because obviously
that makes sense because your body's like, we're ready.
That's when you feel, honestly, I was reading a book too, it's when you feel the hottest. You're like, I look good because your period's done. You lose all the water weight afterwards and you just feel tighter. You feel motivated.
Your estrogen is high, your testosterone's high,
you're
so
like,
you're probably not going to be holding as much water, and you're going to have and actually like testosterone, as you know, and as many of you might not know, when your testosterone is low, your sex drive is low, your energy is low, you're not really able to lose weight or gain muscle very easily. So you can imagine if your testosterone is at its peak,
you're like,
all of that is in reverse. You've got high energy, higher sex drive, higher ability to like burn fat and build muscle.
Exactly.
Utilize the power of testosterone.
You're going to just feel really good at this point. And you're also probably going to notice a lot more increased discharge due to ovulating. It's just going to increase a lot of just the, I don't even want to use the word mucus, but I'm going to mucus and fluid.
Just say it how it is.
Just what's in, I just don't like that word. What's happening, what's dropping. And this is something I actually would really, really challenge everybody to become more aware of is, one, do you have any discharge happening? Is it off? Is there a weird color to it? Is there a weird odor to it? Anything like that? So your discharge is very similar to like if you're sick and your boogers are green, you probably have something going on.
Yeah.
Your downstairs is telling you the exact same thing. It's not weird. It's normal. It's going to happen. There's going to be differences in consistency and everything along those lines. So actually be aware. Mm-hmm. A lot of apps will actually have you track it, which I'm very happy they do. Because I'm like, it's actually very important.
Yes.
So keeping that in mind, noticing it, being okay with it. It's not weird. I'm just going to say that. It's not weird.
No, we'll get into that more later.
But also what's happening right here when you ovulate is you're having just a little bit of an estrogen dip. All of a sudden, you're like, hey-oh, what's happening? So that's going to happen. You can have a little bit of a mood dip too with that. You may not notice it or you may notice it very much so. So just keep an eye. Something to know. I usually don't. I feel pretty good all the way through, to be honest with you.
Is that a good sign?
I think it just depends on the person though too, like as far as like the serotonin drop. It's like, I think a lot of it, if you want me to be honest with you, has to deal with like your gut health and your sleep and your stress and what do you do and like how affected you are by that.
all of the other factors.
I think it's a lot to do with like your serotonin levels as well. So I'm not just going to play into the fact of an estrogen dip. Now you've ovulated, okay? Things are dropping. They're wanting to get fertilized. Things are happening. You're feeling hot. Now we're going to go into your luteal phase. Luteal is very interesting because we just had estrogen drop, and now your progesterone. Progesterone is my favorite. I call her Queen Bee. She's very strong. It's very common for it to get stolen in a sense of if you have too high cortisol, your cortisol will actually take your progesterone, and you won't even get it in the later down like the track essentially as your hormones drip. And your progesterone has a lot to do with having babies and being able to get pregnant and hold a pregnancy. So your progesterone levels need to be at a good point to have a baby. That's a big part of it, actually.
Yeah, anybody who's had fertility troubles or trials will know that, because you go into the doctor frequently, and one of the levels that they'll test frequently is like, let's make sure your progesterone is where it needs to be on the once we're getting close to ovulation.
Exactly. So, progesterone's very important. It's one I usually educate my clients on the most.
Progesterone.
So when this happens, you may have a little bit of bloating though. Your boobs may hurt a little bit more, or they may be a little perkier, a little fuller, whatever it is.
Just a little fuller.
Yep. If you may have some sort of anxiety, this could be actually from lower progesterone.
Yeah, you've mentioned to me that one thing that you'll tend to ask your clients is like, right before your period, do you tend to experience more like anxiety? And if the answer is yes, then that could be a sign of low progesterone. Or not an sufficient amount of progesterone.
Yes.
For where you want it to be, right?
Yep. And that's because progesterone has a very close tie to GABA. And GABA is a neurotransmitter that is one of your calmers. Like, it keeps you calm. It's in a lot of sleep aids. GABA just is one that hangs out progesterone, along with also B6. B6 is calming for your CNS, which is your central nervous system, which also will help relieve anxiety, bring everything down. So
that makes sense then.
So when your progesterone's lower, you're actually lacking that GABA. You're probably deficient in B6, and you're going to feel that and be more aware of that.
Especially if you're at this point where your estrogen levels are lower, your testosterone levels are lower, if you don't have the progesterone. It's like this dance that your hormones are constantly in, especially as a female, but all people really, but because it's constantly dancing. It's like the progesterone goes up, the estrogen comes down, and everything's just really nicely balanced. And if it's not, then it's very evident. You feel it in your energy levels. You feel it in your mood, in your cravings, in your body. Like if you're bloating, if you're holding a lot of water. All that jazz.
And progesterone, while we're here, we're just going to talk about it. Progesterone is one that if it's low and you get it tested and you become more aware of it, you will notice it, because your estrogen is usually going to be in excess. You're going to have some sort of dominance. And maybe your testosterone too will be too high or even too low. When I say she is a queen bee, progesterone truly is a queen bee, and she balances out everybody.
I love that for her.
She is. She's great. I love her.
And for us. Thank you, Queen P.
She's awesome. So, now you're in your luteal phase, and then what happens right after that is you hit the premenstrual, or shall we call it the PMS. This is definitely where your progesterone does drop, your estrogen drops. You're just kind of feeling like, you know what, screw it all.
Yeah, honestly.
So, food cravings, bloating, hunger, irritability, you may be extra tired. You may just kind of be like, meh, like I'm here. So this is something, everyone has different PMS symptoms.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Everybody does have different PMS symptoms. Now, tell me, I know that if it's like extreme, that could be a sign that we're off.
Oh yeah.
Hormonally.
Oh yeah. Because definitely if like when people tell me they're like, I am sick and in bed for weeks, like a whole week, it's like, whoa. Okay.
Yeah, that's something that like...
What's going on?
I think is normalized that isn't normal.
Correct.
Like really bad periods, really bad cramps, like debilitating.
You should not have to feel that. And a lot of that...
Normalized but not normal.
And truly a lot of that has to deal with, I'm going to say it again, your gut health. A big one that plays in is also magnesium. Magnesium is going to be great for your CNS, once again, so mood. B6, but also magnesium helps with bloating, water retention, because what magnesium does is it pulls all the water that's floating around and pulls it into your, actually GI, pulls it into your digestive system.
Yeah.
Which some magnesiums can give you, can make you go to the bathroom very often, so it can cause diarrhea, while some don't do that. Do your research on them. There's multiple types. Those are things that can help with PMS symptoms. And so then once you hit that PMS, guess what, y'all? Day 1 of your cycle, right back to the beginning, and here's a period.
Ready to go again.
So
how that relates to the moon and why I think it's so cool to tie these two things together is because we're all, well, anybody who follows the moon cycle understands, and it's very popular right now. Astrology, like it's making a big comeback.
It really is.
We're into astrology right now, culturally. So the moon, the new moon, correlates with your period, the first day of your period. So the new moon is when it's dark, when it's not full, right? Full is the opposite of new. So new moon is it's dark, it's the low energy point. And what happens is eventually from that point on, it's waxing. It's growing in energy, it's growing in light till it reaches the full moon, which correlates to your ovulation. And then from that point on, it's waning and it's on its way back to the low energy. So we live on the schedule of the sun, which is the masculine component in the stars, in astrology, right? So every 24 hours, the energy recycles. It's a new day every 24 hours. But women, we do not function that way. But we still are expected to show up at work the same day, show up as moms the same every single day. But if you have any, and we all do really, the control that you have over your schedule, lean into this. And not just with planning your life at work and at home. Like, for example, during a new moon, it's a great time to set intentions. In the workplace, it's a good time to plan out projects, to really hone in on your schedule, maybe to revisit your vision, your goals, all that. Make plans for moving forward. Whereas once we're into the ovulation phase where our energy is a little bit higher, that's a great time for collaboration, for executing those plans, for having the business meetings and all that stuff, right? Then thinking about how you physically move your body. If your energy is naturally going to be lower right around the time of your cycle starting, then capitalize on that. Rest. Do some yoga. Do some restorative type of movement. Walk, slow intensity, and then slowly work your way up to when you're ovulating and you're going to feel, like we talked about, your testosterone is going to be higher. Which, by the way, when your testosterone is higher, you will be able to recover better from workouts. So you might as well use that. Go really push a hard workout, lift some heavy weights, because your body's going to be able to recover better, right? Yep. So the idea here is to understand the cycle of, it's your menstrual cycle, but it's also an energy cycle. And the really cool thing about the moon is it's a physical, visual representation of what that looks like. Yeah. And here's a crazy story.
I'm ready.
Just a brief one. I kind of just decided, I used to be on the opposite schedule as the moon. I was menstruating right around the full moon. And I read into all this and I understood it a little bit better. And I just decided I want to align with the moon. And
this is cool.
There's a lot of stuff that I read about your feminine energy and being really heavy in your masculine energy. And that will, people who are aligned with the full moon tend to have more masculine energy in their body and vice versa, right? So I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to just give a lot of attention to play, to being, to femininity, and I'm really going to be intentional about this. And I am now, after 3 cycles, I think it was 3, maybe 4, I am directly aligned with the new moon. So it's nice because I just watched the moon app. I'm like, where is the moon today? Okay, that makes sense. My energy is pretty high today. We got a full moon.
Here we are.
I'm ready to go.
Let's go.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just a fun, interesting story. But there's so much. We were both just talking to my sister earlier today, and she's like, it's just, I want to be more well acquainted with my body. That's so important, not only so we can lean into all this stuff, and like I said at the beginning of this, work with your cycle instead of against your cycle.
Yes.
It's a whole new way of existing as a female.
Oh, it really is, honestly. And it's something that even if you're looking to have a family or if you're not, it's something you need to be in tune with in general, because a lot of women will not even be on birth control and they'll solely rely on where they are in their cycle to not get pregnant.
Oh yeah, which is great.
It is.
Then you don't have to rely on birth control.
Exactly. So it's like, regardless of your goal of wanting to have kids or not, something to be in tune with and know what's happening and where you're at. How am I feeling? How do I look? How's my skin? And my, like, everything along those lines plays into it.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it too is, I'm going to highly recommend, like, you can talk to somebody about it and know, like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I think this is what's going on. And analyzing them and really becoming in tune with them and using an app to track them is super beneficial. I love the Flow app personally. I think it's the easiest to use. That's the only one I've used. I think I've used it for like 5 years.
It's a good one.
But that one's great. There's so many out there. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't really know them. So like I said, I've only used Flow, so here I am. But
there are quite a few. And some of them are really pretty, really like feminine and
flowery. I know. It's like, this is great.
It can help you specifically know like some of the maybe not so positive, not aligning symptoms that you're having. And then you can be a little more clear of your hormone, your endocrine system, and if everything's balanced. Oh my gosh, speaking of endocrine system, can I tell you the funniest story? So my sister texted me yesterday and she was like, are my hormones imbalanced or do I just hate everyone? That's always a question that I ask myself. But I laughed out loud, and my husband and both my 10-year-old boys were there. They're twin boys. And they're like, what's so funny? So I was like, well, here's the thing. We've got this really cool system in our bodies called the endocrine system, and it produces these hormones they all communicate and they all work together, and it's this really delicate but wonderful system. And when your hormones get imbalanced, it kind of throws everything off. And these hormones affect our energy, our mood, our anxiety, all that stuff. I was like, so then Cassidy was saying, am I grumpy and angry at the world because of my hormones, or am I just a grumpy person? And they thought that was so funny. So then later that evening, my little girls, who are like 7 and 6, they're like being super, just honestly super goofy and weird at dinner. And I was like, what? I was like, honey, your children are broken. I always call them his children when they're being weird. He calls them my children when they're being weird too. Like, your children are broken. And Wait just shrugs and he goes, maybe they have a hormone imbalance.
He's like using it like he's like, I know exactly. It's fine.
Like, what? You listen. I thought that was so funny. Anyway.
I love it. While we're here, so now we've kind of like briefly explained the cycle, right? We've explained it by the phases of what's happening, but I want also everyone to know what's considered normal. Because no one really knows. Because let's be real, does anyone ever just be like, hey, let's talk about my period. How you doing?
How's yours?
Yeah, that is not a very common thing. Yeah, what's up? How yours doing? Yeah, no. It's not a very common thing. It's more just like, oh my God, my cramps. And that's usually the most common thing to say. But there is a lot of information out there. Like if you were just hop on Google and type in like normal period, it will say 28-day cycle. It's not very common for everyone to have exactly a 28-day cycle. And to keep that in mind and realize like everyone's body's a little bit different. You can be anywhere from 28, I want to say it's 28 to like 34 days is normal.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be a little different. And so it's like realizing that and tracking your cycle, figure out like, okay, where am I at? What does mine look like? And I can speak on this personally, actually. My cycles from competing, we've talked about this before, they've been off. Even my mom the other day, she's like, are your periods normal? It's been like 6 years, I feel like, since you've had like a normal cycle. I'm like, Mom, you are exactly right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've been working really, really hard to get mine back on track in a good spot. And if that's something you're working on doing, you need to realize it's going to take time. So whenever any client, anyone comes to me about a period, they come off birth control, or maybe they've had lack of period or super heavy periods or whatever it is, when you're correcting a period, it can take 3 to 4 months to even have your first regular period. Because all those little guys at the top that drop down, all those little eggs, all the little follicles, they're like, hey, we're still up here from 3, 4, 5, 6 periods ago. And they still have to drop.
Follicles.
Yep.
Folliculars.
Yes, folliculars. Your little folliculars.
The folliculars are up there.
But you guys have to think of that. Just because you come off birth control doesn't mean, oh, everything's good in check. Or I just got a period, so everything's good in check. It's like, no. You have so many stored up at the top, and they still have to drop down and flush out to almost start fresh. So keeping that in mind, realizing that, being very intentional with like, I'm going to track them, I'm going to take care of myself supplement wise, food, sleep, stress, all those things, and catching on to like, is my period late? Oh yeah, I was so stressed this month and I did not sleep. Just note that. It's going to happen. It's okay.
Yeah. Also, okay, I really wanted to end on this note because I think it is very important to understand how amazing our cycle is.
Oh yeah.
And back in the day before, like way back, before Jesus, for sure, periods were, when women were bleeding on their bleed, they were like worshipped. It was like they were holy during that time. It was because it represents the power that they yield with their organs or sexual organs to produce life.
Yeah.
And then somewhere down the line, women on their bleed became dirty and unclean. And we have come a long way since then, but we still treat our periods like they're this gross, embarrassing thing. And we almost, make ourselves smaller because we're like, oh, I'm on my period, so I'm all emotional. Or it's like, or we go to the bathroom to change,
Yeah.
And we're like embarrassed and we're hiding. I'm not saying we gotta wave that thing around our head.
There's this sense of just being okay with it and realizing it's a thing that it's going to happen with your body. It's natural. It's awesome. It's beautiful.
I would argue not even just being okay with it, like celebrating it, being proud of it, and really, okay, I have one more story. And I was debating on telling this because it is a little bit personal. And it does deal with blood. So if you get squeamish around blood, maybe just skip. But I switched from tampons to the cup.
Oh my gosh.
I did.
Okay.
And it was weird because I've been using tampons for years. I tried the cup years ago. Was not a fan, but now I love it. But the first time I took it out, it totally shocked me because usually when you're going through that process, it's just soaked up into a thing and you usually don't even look at it. You just kind of wrap it up, throw it away, whatever. And I saw all the blood.
That would be a lot.
And I was like, whoa, like I'm bleeding. Like for some reason it just like hit different. But then I realized this blood represents what could have been a human person. Like these are follicles, these are cells, this is tissue. Mm-hmm. Like it made it so much more real to me. And I was like, I am an MF goddess. You know what I'm saying? Like for some reason it was such a gorgeous experience. And I just want women and men to celebrate the cycle and stop treating it like a gross nuisance that everybody just dreads. It's like, this is your power.
Your period is it is a powerful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's healthy to have.
Yes.
Lack of period is not great. You are a woman. I feel way better when I do have my period. I remember competing. I don't know about you, but like when you don't have your period, you're like, I kind of feel weird.
Yeah.
Like I haven't really...
Something's missing.
Yeah. I literally would feel like that. Like it's just kind of odd. Like I wish I had... I usually would say that. I wish I would have my period. Mm-hmm. So, no, it's a healthy thing. It's great. It's good to have. But if you do have concerns about it, questions about it, it's like don't be scared to reach out to...
Us,
honestly.
Send us an email. Send us a message on Instagram. If you have questions about your individual period, our background is in nutrition and fitness, and specifically, we really both, especially Lauren, dove into hormone health and gut health. So we have answers, and we also encourage you, like we always do, to send this to somebody that you just can be like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense.
Here we are.
This is why I turned into a psycho before my period. But the thing is that this is the other thing too, is when we start to understand what's going on, it's like I'm not a psycho. I have less serotonin. I have, my progesterone's a little bit higher, and which is like the chill because it's related to GABA, right? Mm-hmm. But then you try to force yourself to have energy. You try to force yourself to be happy. Oh, yeah. And then you feel even worse until you're able to be like, oh, this is normal. This is good. I'm leaning in. I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to rest. I'm going to honor my cycle. She's a queen.
It's all okay.
You'll feel so much better. So
yes, and just know it's okay. It's beautiful.
Thank you guys for coming today, for stopping in, for listening. We so appreciate your support.
Yes.
And thanks for joining us as we're just experimenting with all the technology and the different ways to have a podcast. There's no right way. We're just doing our thing.
There's so many ways.
There's so many ways. We're going to do what works best for us. Okay. Love you guys.